The rain had been falling since late afternoon, tapping softly against the windows of Emily's small home in Portland, the kind of steady sound that usually made her feel calm. That evening, though, her heart felt restless. Mark had called earlier, his voice brighter than usual, saying he was bringing someone important home for dinner. He didn't explain more, only that it mattered. Emily cleaned the living room twice, fixed her hair, and cooked his favorite meal, thinking it must be a coworker or a friend. She wanted everything to be perfect. Their marriage had felt distant lately, like two people living beside each other, instead of together, and she hoped this dinner might bring back some warmth. When the door finally opened, Mark stepped inside quickly, followed by a tall man with neat hair and a calm smile. "Emily, this is Daniel Carter," Mark said, almost rushing the words, "my boss." The title alone made Emily straighten her back. Daniel reached out his hand with quiet confidence and thanked her for inviting him. His eyes were kind, not cold like she expected from someone so successful. The moment their hands touched, she felt a strange spark of awareness, not attraction. Exactly, but the feeling of being truly noticed. They sat at the dining table while rain blurred the streetlights outside. Mark talked more than usual, telling stories about work, laughing loudly, praising Daniel's leadership. It felt forced. Emily barely recognized the man across from her. Daniel listened politely, but often turned to Emily instead, asking about her hobbies, her writing, her favorite places in the city. No one had asked her such things in years. Mark kept his eyes on Daniel like a student waiting for a teacher's approval. Emily answered simply, but inside she felt something opening. It wasn't romance yet. It was the warmth of being seen. Daniel remembered small details she shared and smiled when she spoke. The dinner moved quickly, but every minute felt important. Emily noticed how Mark barely touched his food, too busy trying to impress his boss. The balance at the table felt wrong. This was supposed to be their home, yet Emily felt like a guest in her own life. When she served dessert, Daniel thanked her again, saying the meal was wonderful and that Mark was lucky to have her. The word lucky hit her chest hard. Mark hadn't called himself lucky in a long time. Emily saw a flicker of emotion cross Daniel's face, respect mixed with something deeper, something careful. Then Mark's phone rang. He rushed to the kitchen, leaving Emily and Daniel alone. The silence between them was soft, not awkward. Daniel said he hoped he hadn't disturbed their evening. Emily said it was fine, though her voice felt quieter than usual. Daniel admitted Mark spoke about her often, about her kindness and patience. That surprised her. She hadn't known Mark still noticed those things. "He's proud of you," Daniel said gently. "But I think he's also afraid." "Afraid of what?" Emily asked. Daniel paused before answering. "Afraid of losing what matters most." The words stayed in the air like smoke. Before she could think more, Mark returned, smiling too wide, acting like nothing serious had happened. They finished the evening with small talk, but Emily's thoughts raced. When Daniel stood to leave, he thanked her again, looking at her as if the night meant more than just dinner. His gaze held respect, curiosity, and something unspoken. After the door closed, Mark let out a breath like he'd been holding it all night. He said the dinner went well, almost relieved. Emily studied him, seeing nervousness instead of pride. She asked why he really brought his boss over. Mark said Daniel was thinking about promoting him. Emily nodded, but deep down she knew there was more behind it. Something emotional, something unplanned. That night, while Mark slept, Emily lay awake, listening to the rain. Her heart slowly connected the moments Mark's nervous energy, his praise of Daniel, the way he pushed Emily into the spotlight. The way Daniel had been invited not just into their home, but into their personal space. Mark hadn't brought his boss to show off his cooking or their house. He brought him to show her. And in that quiet realization, Emily understood the truth that would change everything. The dinner wasn't about work. was about reminding Mark what he was afraid to lose, and it was the beginning of emotions none of them were ready for. The days after the dinner felt different, like the air in the house had shifted. Emily moved through her routine, making breakfast, answering emails, folding laundry, but her mind kept returning to Daniel's calm voice and the way he had listened. To her, like her words mattered. Mark seemed lighter, almost hopeful, as if the evening had given him new energy. He talked more about work, about how Daniel respected him, about future chances. Yet he never asked Emily how she felt about the dinner. That silence said more than any question. The first call came the next afternoon. Emily was washing dishes when the phone rang. Mark was still at work. She almost let it go to voicemail, but something told her to answer. "Hello, this is Emily," she said. "Hi, Emily, it's Daniel. Hope I'm not calling at a bad time." His voice sounded warm and careful. "No, it's fine," she replied, wiping her hands on a towel. "I just wanted to thank you again for dinner. It really meant a lot." They spoke for a few minutes about food, about how he had grown up in Seattle, about how rainy weather always made him think. It was simple, but it felt easy. When they hung up, Emily noticed she was smiling. After that, the calls became more common. Sometimes Daniel asked for Mark, but other times he asked for Emily. They talked about books she loved, about how she once dreamed of writing stories, about how life didn't always go as planned. He never crossed a line, he just listened. That made everything feel deeper. Mark noticed too. "You and Daniel seem to get along well," he said one evening. "He's kind," Emily replied. Mark nodded slowly, like he was proud but also uneasy. A few days later, Daniel invited both of them to a small cafe near the river during lunch. Mark said he might be late because of a meeting, but Emily went anyway. She arrived early and sat by the window, watching the water flow past the city. Daniel was already there, holding 2 cups of coffee. "I guessed what you like," he said with a smile. That small thoughtfulness warmed her chest. They talked about life, about choices, about how sometimes people stayed in routines because change felt scary. Emily found herself opening up in ways she hadn't in years. She told him about feeling invisible at times, about how marriage slowly turned into habits instead of connection. Daniel listened without interrupting. "You deserve to feel valued," he said softly. The words felt heavy because they were true. When Mark finally arrived, he sensed the closeness immediately. The way Emily and Daniel paused when he sat down, the quiet understanding in their eyes. He laughed it off at first, but the tension followed them home. That night, Mark's calm broke. "Do you like him?" he asked suddenly while they stood in the kitchen. Emily froze. "Why would you ask that?" She said carefully. "'Cause I see the way you light up when he calls," Mark said. "I see the way you talk about him." Emily took a deep breath. "I like feeling heard. I like feeling like I matter." The words cut deeper than anger ever could. Mark rubbed his face slowly. "I didn't mean for this to happen." "Then why did you bring him here?" she asked quietly. Silence filled the room. Finally, Mark sat down heavily at the table. "'Cause I was scared," he admitted. "I felt you pulling away. I thought if someone like Daniel admired you, I'd wake up and become better. I thought it would remind me what I had." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "So you put another man between us to fix our marriage?" "I didn't think it would turn into this," Mark whispered. Neither of them spoke for a long moment. Emily felt hurt, but also sad. Mark hadn't tried to fix things with her. He had tried to scare himself into loving her better. "I never wanted to fall into feelings," she said softly. "But loneliness makes space for emotions." Mark looked up, his eyes red. "Do you love him?" Emily shook her head slowly. "I don't know him enough for that, but I care, and that scares me." Mark closed his eyes. That night they slept in the same bed but felt miles apart. Over the next few days, everything felt fragile. Daniel continued calling, unaware of the tension he had caused. Emily answered less, not because she didn't want to hear his voice, but because her heart felt torn. One afternoon, Daniel asked gently, "Did I do something wrong?" "No," Emily said quietly. "Things are just complicated." "I never wanted to cause pain," he said. "I just enjoyed talking to you." "So did I," she admitted. They both fell silent. Sometimes connection grows not because people seek it, but because it fills an empty space. And now that space had turned into a storm. Emily realized the dinner had opened a door that couldn't easily be closed. Feelings were forming, truths were rising, and their lives would never feel simple again.